Today I'm joined by some of the school leaders and artists in residence that made creative leadership in learning a reality. They are...
I'm Amy Hardingham. I'm a theatre maker, an artist on the Creative Leadership in Learning program, and a drama teacher at Mossman High School.
I'm Mark Diamond, proud principal at Lansvale Public School and active member of the Lansvale Learning Community Creativity Crew.
I'm Belinda Cook. I'm the proud principal of Campsie Public School and very grateful participant in this program.
My name's Curly Fernandez. I'm an artist in resident here at the Opera House, and my primary discipline is audience participatory processes.
And I'm Mike Saxon. I'm principal at Liverpool Boys High School.
Thanks so much to all of you. We have so much to dig into here. And before we get into the weeds and get our hands dirty with the specifics of CLIL in your individual schools and how you've interacted with it, you've all had a different journey through creativity. And I'd really love to know, is there an experience of creativity that you've had throughout your time, maybe in this program or prior to that, that's really moved you? Can you tell us something about that? Amy, can we start with you?
Sure. Well, I've had many, obviously making theatre with young people for many, many years. But there was a moment when I first came to the Creative Leadership in Learning program, actually, and was brought together with some other artists by the amazing Frank Newman. And we went into a bunker here at the Opera House, and we spent 2 days working collaboratively to develop the sorts of programs and activities that we would be running. And it was so important and impactful for me because artists don't often spend a lot of time developing their art form, but also crucially the other artists were from different artistic backgrounds, which is part of the great joy of this program and why it's such amazing quality is that it's very cross-disciplinary. So that was a moment where I felt I found my people. Everyone in that room was all about the communities and the participants that they work with, and everyone in that room really believes that creativity and artistic practice belongs to everybody, and that was a really amazing moment, and I've loved being involved ever since.
Amazing. We'll return to that theme in a second. Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Eddie. The last year's Amplifier was as an audience member. I watched 5, 6, H, one of our comprehensive Stage 3 classes of children, having collaborated with Luke Escombe and Brooke Hutchinson, their teacher, to tell their parents' journey as immigrants to Australia. And it was poignant. I sobbed the whole way through the performance. I was moved artistically. I was proud of these children and their capacity to articulate, to spin a narrative, to move from whimsy on a previous item through to deep and engaging stories of survival. And so it was just lovely to sit there and be entertained, be moved and be quite proud.
I suppose when I heard that, I travelled back into my own childhood, and my best friend in primary school's mother owned a wool shop, and I used to spend a lot of time in that wool shop after school. And she used to show me and teach me all of the different things that she could make with that wool and that medium. And I suppose it untapped something in me that I like creating, and I like to give the adults that I work with and the students that I work with opportunities to be creative as well.
Yeah, for me, like growing up as a man of colour, art wasn't really valued. And so it was always a way of passing on cultural custom or norms, religious norms. And so I remember like being like maybe when you're 10, going and seeing a play for the first time and just seeing a theatre and seeing metaphor and seeing a story unfold. That was something new. It kind of broke open the notion of what I thought art could be, like the limitations. And I remember even being at Liverpool with the boys, and some of those boys from like really strong Arabic backgrounds, they had that same experience. And it was just sort of lovely to connect on that level.
Yeah, look, and I'm going to reference the exhibition at Takeover that Louise mentioned, because that was a day of creative moments and just watching those boys excel and the way they've grown in their creativity. And all of those performances were amazing. When you knew those boys and their stories and where they were 3 weeks before and where they got to in just 3 weeks, that was incredibly moving. Can't wait to do it again.
Amazing. It's brilliant to hear each of your different schools and how they've interacted with this program and your own personal journeys as well. Belinda, I'd like to come to you. One of the key characteristics about creative leadership in learning is that it isn't a prepackaged fire and forget program that has a set series of fixed modules and we just roll that out wherever we go. It's, from what I understand, living and breathing. It listens and responds to the context of the schools that participate. Now, Campsie Public School, it's an unusual place in many ways. Can you paint us a picture of Campsie and tell us how CLIL interacted with your very specific circumstances?
Well, yes. Paint a picture of Campsie. I think we could count on one hand how many blades of grass there are in the school. So that's incredibly unique in itself. While it's a beautiful place, it's a very sterile, physically sterile environment because there's lots of concrete and there's lots of tall buildings and not a lot of space. And also, it serves a community of almost 700 students from very diverse language and cultural backgrounds who many families and many students might have a more narrow perspective of what education is and can be. So I suppose how this program interacts with the school, it really opens the minds of everyone, the whole school community, and also uses our school environment in different ways so that everyone can engage with it differently as well.
Mark, I know you're partly responsible for Belinda being on stage with us today because you're one of the big reasons that she got on board with CLIL in the first place. Some of our viewers are in schools right now wondering about whether they should take part in this program and why. From your experience in the program, what would you say to them in the first instance?
Yeah, it's a real pay it forward moment because I'm only on stage because my wife's previous school exemplified their first year's involvement, participation, honour in the program, and I thought, gee, I really want to get a part of that too. So, look, for me, great teachers will ensure that children consume content in a way that's meaningful, that allows them to be changed, be improved, be challenged, be reflective. And the wonderful thing about this project is you feel privileged and honoured in the collaborative nature of the endeavour with the artists, with this fabulous place, in a way that is truly inspiring. And the parallels for me as a principal, as a co-learner with my colleagues and with the artists, all the way along the journey were around, well, good pedagogy is around being reflective, being collaborative, leading, following, understanding the aesthetic, solving problems, more than gobbling up content and regurgitating it. And so the work that this project has done by inspiring us to get a greater sense of purpose and audience for children, of engaging them in task rather than on task, has been affirmed by the challenges and the real life experiences that the children can participate in at school, here at the house, and even in their imagination as a result of the work that's inspired through the artists and the fascinating people that provoke the opportunities and experiences of this project. It's been wonderful.
Mark, something you just said, that very vivid metaphor of gobbling up and regurgitating, reminds me a bit of something, Curly, you mentioned in your introduction. You alluded to your heritage, your cultural background, and how that informs your view of art as something to be inhabited and not just consumed. I'm wondering if you could speak to that and also tell us why that was important for your work with Belinda's students and teachers.
So I think one of the geniuses behind the program is that we sort of see art as more than just decoration. And so when we go into the school and set up the teacher professional learning, there's a whole bunch of tasks and activities and beautiful exercises that we create. But the actual part of it that's interesting is where the teacher then takes that and bends it and molds it to their own artistic signature. So it's very much about not just sort of viewing things, but actually how you inhabit it, and how different students can inhabit a lesson experience as opposed to like a lesson plan or just a lesson delivery. It's really about a lesson experience. And the program and the artists, when we come in, we show an artistic process, and that enables teachers to find that and put it into their practice. So it's about really three-dimensionally absorbing yourself inside it as opposed to the distance.
Amazing. Now, Amy, both you and Curly have worked as artists in residence here at the Sydney Opera House. But you also wear another hat here today because you completed your teacher training some years ago, and right now you're actually a full-time high school teacher. What's it like thinking about student learning from both of those, I imagine, fairly different perspectives?
Oh, Eddie, look, for me, it's always been two things together. I've never, ever seen them as separate. I was an artist first, and then went and did my teacher training because I was working in schools a lot and I wanted to feel more confident in using the language that the teachers were using so that my work was more meaningful. And I learned so much about being an artist from being a teacher and so much about being a teacher from being an artist, and the two go together. And this program's so incredible because, as Curly was saying, it's really about inhabiting those kind of lesson plans. I'd like to think that the perspective I bring is one of really helping teachers work out how they can kind of practically bring the exercises and the programs that we do in this to their classrooms. But of course, all the artists can do that. And there's this fantastic dual nature with this program. So last year, for example, at Belinda's school at Campsie, Curly was the artist in residence at the school working on a project with one teacher and with students, while I was running the teacher professional learning. And so, as Wendy mentioned earlier, that's 5 lots of 2 full days. Full days, teacher professional learning, teachers are out of class, they're working in a room with an Opera House artist, and fundamentally, the principal is also part of that training. So the principal can't not be involved in a hands-on way, which is so fantastic and so crucial to the success of the program. So teachers are seeing their principal, their leader, get down and dirty with them. And the thing is that when you're in a creative process, everybody's an equal. Everybody's an equal player and everybody has something to contribute. So the principal being there, I think, really says that in a really hands-on way. So last year at Campsie, it was this fantastic, there was this great sort of dual nature of what was going on because the teacher Curly was working with would have her sessions with Curly and the students, and then she'd come to the professional learning sessions and she'd talk about the project. And then we'd contextualise the project in terms of the activities that we were doing in the training. And then we'd teach the other teachers what it is that she was doing with Curly in the project. And so it was this kind of a circle, if you like, where the learning was so rich and so meaningful for everybody involved. And then, of course, the program goes over 3 years. So many, if not all of the teachers in the school will have had an engagement with the program in some way.
Yeah, it's that sharing. It's really about sharing. So you've got teachers sharing with students, you've got artists sharing with teachers, you've got artists sharing with, the community. And so it's really about, again, the kind of ideas of what you think creativity is. Like it's kind of like, creativity sometimes feels like really elusive or frivolous, but what we actually do is give it a really strong foundation, make it concrete, so then teachers can feel comfortable in taking some risks and in taking some value in their own artistic signature. It's really about supporting them, not about replicating. It's really about supporting and making it tangible so that the teachers feel really confident and to share.
And that rigour and tangibility, it comes from something I think, Amy, you mentioned a couple of times as I noticed you eyeballing Mike, a principal who you worked with last year. You know, when Amy was at your school, Mike, your work together was outstanding in its excellence. And it's not just me who thinks that. Louise Heron earlier mentioned that the Takeover received this incredible award, the Secretary's Award, for an outstanding school initiative. And you did, right at the start of this talk, about the transformation over the course of those 3 weeks and what you saw in some of those boys and how they changed. Could you give us some more insight into perhaps a student or two or even a teacher who went through a particular journey that made an impact on you?
Yeah, like I can think of a number of the teaching staff. Let me start there. And following up on what we're saying, with this form of learning, you've got to let go. And so you've got to trust those around you, you've got to trust the artists, you've got to trust your colleagues, and you've actually got to give the control to the kids. So it's the kids who are doing the creative learning. It's the kids who are producing the creative products and the creative journeys. And you've got to let them take control. So that change in a number of our staff, they found that incredibly difficult. And we were, in the takeover, literally sitting down each afternoon and working out, well, what are we doing tomorrow? Where are the kids at? And what are we going to be doing tomorrow to move forward? When I think of some of our boys and that journey, and they had this incredible high to begin with, and that lasted a day or two, and then we kind of go, well, what do we do now? And picking those kids up and continuing with the journey. And some of the boys who we didn't think would get there, and I'm thinking of our hip-hop group in particular, pulling our hair out, saying they're just not going to get there. But when that connected with the artist, their performances were outstanding. And these were boys that are not connected to school typically. They're not what you'd call A-grade students or anything like that, but their skill and their creativity, their depth of learning, the resilience it's given them, and they're all doing really well at school now, and Takeover has about a big role in impacting on those boys' lives.
That's immensely refreshing to hear, Mike, and especially to also know that to have a peek behind the veil, as it were, to see this work is hard, it's gritty, it's difficult. I don't think any of us want to give the impression that this is just simple and easy and take part in this and it just magically happens. Mark, you're someone who I know has had plenty of experience with leadership programs like this, and creativity is really important to your work in your school. An educator for over 30 years. Despite that, you've called creative leadership in learning one of the most exciting things you've ever taken part in. Why is that?
I certainly feel that it's handed me quite generously lots of highlights that I'll reflect upon at the end of my career. You know, moments of playfulness, moments of deep knowledge, many aha moments, for instance. And I think it comes back to, we talk a lot about personalised learning and ensuring that we're developing whole children and meeting the needs of children. That's a really complex piece of work to be able to meet the needs of the varied nature of students in our care. But to be a great educator, you must be a great learner. And this, the sort of the tools and the framework that underpin this fabulous work really necessitate a sense of deep immersion, reflection, discomfort, but loads of laughs, and certainly lays down a track to your memory really soundly. And so I've just watched lots of teachers, often very different people, and the artists and teachers who learn to deeply respect the points of difference, to take the mickey at times, to be challenged and provoked appropriately, and to see it work in our school with the children fundamentally, because they're our core business, but to see educators being, and as Belinda said before, invested in, trusted, provoked and challenged to be at their best, and parents. We've got over 30 parents who've been trained by Howard Matthew and members of our creativity crew, and they will not let us leave creativity alone anymore. They understand that it fits squarely and firmly in the quality learning environment in every classroom and has dividends. I mean, our kids that, more than 2/3 of our community belong in the lowest quartile of socioeconomic advantage, but we're not characterised by that. We have immense culture and religion and sense of humour and experience and resilience and so on, but we're proud poor. You wouldn't know it when it comes to this, because we even against NAPLAN, which is one measure of success, we grow children at 1.5 to 2 times the national rate. And I do believe developing them as whole people is part of the confidence with which they undertake other challenges in the more formal sense. So, yeah, it's been great.
Belinda?
I just wanted to echo that part of the reason why it is so exciting is because the three of us are public educators, and our system is striving to be one of the best systems in the world. And these projects are the best of what learning can be and look like. It is the best. This is what we're striving for. We're striving for learning that encompasses everything. It's service to your community, belonging to your community. It's purposeful learning. We're developing strong skills in literacy and numeracy, but for a purpose. we're impacting ourselves, we're impacting our friends, we're impacting our teachers, we're impacting our school, we're giving back and we're giving to ourselves at the same time, and everything that we're doing is quality. That's why it's so exciting.
Amazing. I think, something that's come through all of what you've been saying is actually, Amy, one of your core convictions, that creativity is the domain of everybody. Many of the students and teachers that we work with and who are listening in right now would struggle to identify with that statement, though. So how has CLIL informed that view and your response to people who have that kind of self-concept as part of their identity?
It's really hard, and one of the great things about CLIL is because it happens over a long period of time. There is time to work with people and bring that out in them. Yeah, it's true. So yes, look, I'm a drama teacher, and traditionally creativity is the domain of drama or visual art or music in a school, and particularly in a high school, obviously, where it's subject by subject. But what this program aims to do, and the great value in it, and the thing I believe in, is that it does bring out the creativity in everybody, which absolutely is there. And you're a great example of someone, Eddie, who uses creativity in maths, which are often described as poles apart, and yet they're not at all. A creative thinking process can be applied to anything. And these projects are interesting. I came into this as a theatre maker, but my project with Liverpool Boys last year was a virtual reality project. I'd never, ever worked in virtual reality before. And in that project, the students and I and their teacher, Paul, who we saw in the video, who was the second last person to speak, the man who said he was moved to tears watching his boys on stage, together we actually invented a whole fake school. Because, Mike, as you say, it's got to be student-led. And that is hard for teachers, I think. So it's A, finding the creativity that's in us all, and it's B, stepping back from teacher-led to student-led. But see, interestingly, with that project at Liverpool Boys, it was really a tussle to find out what we were going to make the project about, until I remembered the core question for Liverpool Boys is, well, it's not a question, it's a statement, and it's, "You're not the boss of me." Now, once we brought that into the room, that back in the early days of when you began on CLIL, it was all about "you're not the boss of me," all of a sudden, everything we'd been exploring with the boys in the room, it came into focus. And very quickly, we came up with this project where the boys invented a school. They came up with the logo, they came up with a strategic plan, they came up with a subject list, they built a website, they created a uniform, and then they created their classes and shot virtual reality 360 film of 6 of their classes. And then they presented it on the stage at the Opera House in the Amplified Festival. They got audience up on stage wearing VR goggles, and the idea was that they weren't presenting a play, it wasn't a traditional piece of theatre, it was an immersive piece of theatre in which they were pitching their school to the audience. So that's sort of a long way around of saying that these kinds of projects have got to be student-led. They bring in new ideas from all sorts of disciplines and all sorts of subjects. Now, those boys, in the time we worked together, definitely met outcomes from all of their different subject areas. It wasn't just, in any way, actually, a theatre or a drama project. Yes, I used those skills that I've got from drama and theatre, which, those core kind of play-building skills are about collaboration, structuring group work, about how we generate lots of content and then edit it down to come up with a final project. But anyone can do that as long as they have a good grasp of what a project is and how to develop ideas and how to drive something forward and how to finish something. So that can belong to everybody, and I believe it very firmly that it does. And also just to quickly say that my key collaborator on that project was the head teacher of technology, Paul Amon, again, who we saw on the video. And he is not someone who previously would have described himself as an artistic person, and in fact was very challenged by that, and the group we worked with were the Code Club. And together we went on a journey where we all learnt new things. Like I said, I'd never done VR before, but we made this project together. And that's the thing, you just need the skill set of being able to work as collaborators on a project.
Mike?
Look, it's just super exciting when you see the group of nerds in the school create something like this. And creativity is in all of us. It is something you have to work really hard at. It's difficult work, but it's so rewarding. All of those boys then joined the Takeover project and kept working around this space. And they keep bugging me to, when are we doing this work again? It's really unleashed a love of that I'm on my own. It was what was really funny for me watching that performance was actually how close their vision of a school is to mine. So, that our creativity is aligned.
That's brilliant. Curly, one last question for you. Hearing Mike describe the takeover reminds me of something you taught me, actually, which is that the artistic process is often not so much about the artwork as it is about the art work. Could you close off for us, what is it about CLIL that helps students and teachers experience that process?
It's really about taking the pressure off that final product. It's going to be of excellence, but actually what's important is the process. So, at Campsie Public School last year, we did a Korean bilingual film festival, and it was an outdoor event, and it was all led by the students. They were responsible for finding the films, for making the films, working with the Korean Cultural Society of Australia, setting up everything, and the day came and it looked like it was going to rain. And so the decision as the adult would be, we have to go inside. And I said to the students, look, it might rain, it might not, but it's up to you. It's your festival. What do you want to do? And they said, we're going to go outside. We want to go outside. They had a little meeting. And I looked on the little radar with Rachel and I went, it's going to rain, Rach. It's going to rain. No one's going to turn up. And I said, what's important here is not us as the adults coming in and taking the direction, but to value the student's decision. And regardless of what happens, if it pours, if it rains, it doesn't matter because we're valuing the student's decision. And so CLIL is very much about valuing the student's decision and allowing teachers to be creative within that and to feel safe. It's very much about that. And I think that's what's so exciting. It turns that whole system as we know it completely upside down. It equalises everything where everyone has a right to art being a human right, and that art has something more than just decoration or creative art or something that's separate, but it's actually immersed throughout the full experience.
Amazing.
Yeah.
This is going to be tough, but one sentence each. Your favourite thing about being part of CLIL? Mike, we'll start with you and we'll come down.
I think you have to let go, and when you do, you get more benefits than you could ever have imagined.
It's an absolute honour as an artist to be in the school and to see the school transform into a cultural site.
Seeing teachers and students smiles bigger, taller, chest puffier, just so proud of themselves and what they've achieved.
A bit obscurely, solving problems. So similar to Curly's story, our children were doing a beautiful song with Luke Escombe recently, and then the COVID banned singing. So they've done the performance in an ensemble using Auslan. And they should be standing behind the Premier, really, in terms of their capacity to explore, solve a problem, and demonstrate their creativity.
Eddie, in your opening speech, you talked about how when the education system first evolved, it was all about preparing students for the workers they'd be of the future, for a purpose. That's actually what this program's doing. It's preparing students for a new future, which is uncertain, in which we have to problem solve, in which we have to collaborate, and in which we have to build something new. And that's what this work does, and that's why I love it.